pay close attention to the woman walking toward her motel room. This is divorced 37-year-old Ashley Lambert, a mother of 4 children who considers them her entire world. The scene is a nondescript motel room in East Baltimore. Security cameras capture Ashley going into her motel room. Afterwards, a man is seen knocking on the door and going into the room with her, but only one will walk out of that room alive. These are the final recorded moments of Ashley's life, behind the closed door. 6 days before the discovery at the motel, the violence began on the 2400 block of Annapolis Road. On March 22, 2021, a woman entered a residence expecting a normal afternoon, but instead found her sister, 21-year-old Denita Barrett, unresponsive in the living room. Denita was a mother of 2 children who was just beginning her adult life. When the Baltimore Police Department arrived, they found a scene that appeared chaotic and physically aggressive. The initial sweep of the home revealed that Denita had been the victim of a targeted attack. Detectives noted signs of a struggle that suggested she had been overpowered within her own living room. Unlike many residential crimes, there were no immediate signs of forced entry, suggesting Denita may have known her attacker or invited him inside. The investigation quickly moved from a medical emergency to a homicide inquiry as the physical state of the body became clear. The most significant development at this first scene was not what was taken, but what was left behind. The police were able to recover the surveillance footage that covers Denita's residence. The footage captures a man in a hoodie carrying a bag and walking towards the back door of her residence, but it doesn't capture any other relevant detail. The police were also able to run a forensic extraction on her phone and found out she had invited someone she met on a dating site that afternoon. Yet at this stage, the police had no name to attach to it. As the neighborhood of Baltimore Highlands processed the news, the medical examiner began the task of determining how a healthy 21-year-old could die so suddenly. The report would eventually reveal a terrifying pattern of behavior, but for now, the police were working a single, isolated case. The clock was ticking, and in less than a week, the same levels of violence would be unleashed again at the Deluxe Plaza Motel. The discovery of Ashley Lambert on March 28 at the Deluxe Plaza Motel changed the scope of the investigation entirely. Baltimore detectives now faced 2 dead mothers within a 6-day window. At the motel on Pulaski Highway, the scene mirrored the brutality of the Annapolis Road case. Ashley, like Denita, showed physical evidence of a violent struggle before her death. Procedurally, the police began to look for a signature, a specific behavior that linked the 2 crimes. They found it in the digital records and the physical state of the victims. Both women had been active on dating websites, and both had agreed to meet a stranger for a personal encounter. The investigation transitioned from 2 separate homicides into a hunt for a serial offender. The footage from the Deluxe Plaza Motel provided the first clear look at the suspect. A man wearing a hoodie and holding a bag emerges from the footage, an identical description to the man seen in the unclear footage at Denita's residence 6 days ago. The suspect approached Ashley's motel room and she let him in. After 25 minutes, the suspect walks out of the motel room, but there was no sign of Ashley ever stepping out of that room again. The man moves quickly to the back of the hotel and is seen concealing what seems to be a knife in his pocket before moving away from the hotel. He appeared calm and unbothered, like he had done this before. He is later seen at a nearby Dunkin' Donuts not too far from the motel. This mundane stop would become his greatest mistake. Detectives recovered a receipt from the trash and matched the transaction time to the store's own security video. By tracing the financial data from that specific purchase, investigators finally put a name to the shadow in the footage: Christopher Tyson. Through his Visa and Wells Fargo cards, the police not only confirmed his identity, but also obtained a registered address. With a name and an address linked to the financial records from the Dunkin' Donuts purchase, the Baltimore Police Department moved to apprehend Christopher Tyson. The investigation had led them to a residence where they believed the suspect was hiding. A search warrant was authorized, and tactical units were deployed to the location to ensure he did not have the opportunity to destroy further evidence or flee. Upon entering the home, officers moved to the second floor. They located Tyson inside a bedroom and took him into custody without incident. During the initial sweep of the room, investigators looked for any items that might link him to the specific violence inflicted upon Denita Barrett and Ashley Lambert. Inside his bag, they found a bloody knife and the same red hoodie he wore on the surveillance footage. Tyson was transported to an interrogation room where detectives began the process of questioning him about his movements in March 2021. Initially, Tyson attempted to provide various explanations for his whereabouts, but the evidence gathered from the CCTV footage and the credit card trail made his denials difficult to maintain. The detectives decided to change their tactics, presenting him with a direct image of himself captured at the Deluxe Plaza Motel. Seeing his own face in the surveillance still, Tyson's demeanor shifted. He admitted that the man in the photo was him and confirmed that he had met Ashley Lambert through an online platform. He stated that the meeting was intended for a sexual encounter, but he remained vague about the details of what happened once the door to the room was closed. The investigators now had a confession of presence, but they needed him to explain the extreme physical state in which the women were found. The question remained, what triggered the sudden shift from a digital date to a lethal assault? Inside the interrogation room, the pressure from the detectives began to break Tyson's composure. Faced with the undeniable evidence of the surveillance footage, he admitted to meeting Ashley Lambert online for a prearranged encounter. He eventually described how she had insulted him, and a heated argument broke out inside the Deluxe Plaza motel room. It was at this point that he revealed the specific method of violence he used to end her life. Tyson confessed to placing Ashley in a powerful chokehold and explained how he used his physical strength to crush her airway, maintaining the hold until she was unconscious. Afterwards, he stabbed her 5 times before leaving the motel room. This admission provided the medical explanation for the findings in the autopsy, confirming that the loss of blood and suffocation was the primary cause of Ashley's death. But the confession did not stop with the motel room. Under further questioning, Tyson admitted that he had murdered Denita Barrett in the exact same manner just 1 week earlier. He stated that he had also met Denita online and traveled to her home on Annapolis Road. According to his account, she became angry after he used insulting language toward her. In response to the verbal altercation, he overpowered her, applying the same method. He sexually assaulted her and stabbed her to death in her own living room. These admissions revealed a terrifyingly consistent pattern of behavior. Tyson was not reacting to a single moment of rage. He was utilizing a specific, violent technique to silence women he met through digital platforms. However, as the detectives dug deeper into his recent history, they realized the scope of his crimes extended beyond these 2 murders. There was evidence of another attack that had occurred just as the police were closing in, one that involved even more diverse and disturbing charges. As detectives processed Tyson's confession, they uncovered that his streak of violence was not limited to the deaths of Ashley Lambert and Denita Barrett. On April 24, 2021, the same day he was taken into custody, Tyson had been involved in another brutal incident. This third encounter did not result in a death, but it exposed the full breadth of his predatory nature. The investigation into this final incident led to a laundry list of severe charges, including rape, sex offenses, and first-degree assault. Unlike the previous cases where the women were found after the fact, this survivor provided a direct account of Tyson's methods. Evidence showed that in addition to the physical beating and sexual violence, he had used a deadly weapon to facilitate an armed robbery and theft during the attack. The procedural data suggested that Tyson was escalating his behavior, becoming more brazen with each encounter. Police realized that the methods he described in the murders was just part of a wider cycle of assault and domination. The sheer variety of the charges, ranging from robbery to rape, indicated that Tyson viewed these women as targets for total exploitation. Recognizing the danger he posed to the public, the Baltimore Police Department took the unusual step of releasing Tyson's mugshot to the media. They encouraged any other women who had survived similar encounters to come forward. The authorities feared that Christopher might have left a trail of survivors across the state, women who had been beaten or assaulted but were too afraid to report the man from the dating site. The walls were closing in, but for the families of the deceased, the true horror was just beginning to be understood in the court of law. In May 2022, the legal proceedings against Christopher Tyson reached a critical turning point. Rather than proceeding to a full trial, Tyson entered a plea agreement admitting guilt for the murders of both Ashley Lambert and Danita Barrett. The courtroom was filled with the family and friends of the victims, who finally had the opportunity to stand feet away from the man who had systematically dismantled their lives. The victim impact statements provided a factual account of the devastation left in Tyson's wake. Danita Barrett's sister addressed him directly, stating that he had torn her family apart. Her grandmother highlighted the long-term consequences of his violence, noting that Danita's 2 children would now grow up without a mother. Despite the brutal nature of the crimes, the beatings, the sexual assaults, and the lethal chokeholds, one of Ashley Lambert's family members expressed a lack of desire for vengeance, stating she did not wish for him to be killed but trusted that divine justice would be served. Tyson also took the stand, offering an apology to the families he had victimized. However, the procedural details of his plea agreement drew significant attention. In exchange for his guilty plea to the 2 murders, the prosecution agreed to drop the separate charges from his April 24th arrest, which included rape, armed robbery, and assault with a deadly weapon. While those specific charges were set aside, the weight of the 2 murder convictions ensured that Christopher would no longer be a threat to the public. The judge delivered a sentence that reflected the repetitive and violent nature of Tyson's actions. For the deaths of Ashley Lambert and Danita Barrett, Christopher Tyson was sentenced to 2 life terms in prison. The question of his motive remained tied to his own confessions of anger and escalation, but the legal system had finally reached a conclusion. The case of Ashley Lambert and Danita Barrett left a permanent scar on the Baltimore community, particularly within the neighborhoods where Danita Barrett and Ashley Lambert lived. The swift investigation, aided significantly by CCTV footage and digital forensic evidence, brought a dangerous serial offender to justice in just over a month. The families of the victims faced a devastating reality as multiple children were left without their mothers. During the 2022 sentencing, the emotional toll was made clear through victim impact statements that described a family torn apart by the senseless violence. The community was forced to confront the hidden dangers of digital dating platforms, which Tyson used to identify and isolate his targets.